Thank you. We will now begin with our superintendent comments. Ms. Moore.
Good evening. Our custodians are the behind-the-scene heroes of every school building, and they are taking center stage this week as students and staff express their gratitude as part of Custodian Appreciation Week. Custodians are often the first on campus and the last to leave, and they perform myriad tasks in order to ensure that each school is clean and safe. They'll be getting goodie bags, meals, handmade cards, and social media shout-outs this week, but they are appreciated every day. Any school administrator will tell you that school buildings simply wouldn't function without our hardworking custodians. So I hope you will all join me this week in expressing gratitude for all of our custodians and the essential role they play in maintaining learning environments where students can thrive. October is Disability History Awareness Month, an annual opportunity for all of us to learn more about the many abilities that people with disabilities possess. Our Special Education Services team compiled resources that have been shared with schools to guide informative discussions and activities. Schools are encouraged to create promotional items such as banners, videos, stories, songs, and/or illustrations that promote disability awareness, select from selected reading materials and inspirational quotes to spark discussions with students, and share their Disability History and Awareness Month activities on social media. Disability History and Awareness Month is an excellent opportunity to foster understanding and unity. I look forward to seeing the creative ways our students and staff celebrate the abilities of all students. Finally, this evening, October is also National Bullying Prevention Month, and our school counseling team has prepared activities to help celebrate and bring awareness to our efforts around bullying prevention. Students will learn more about what they can do to prevent or stop bullying. When it comes to bullying, we know that silence hurts, so it is critical to encourage students to report incidents of bullying that they witness. Students will learn more about bullying statistics and ways to report bullying, including the Safe Schools Tip Line, which is 919-856-1911, which anyone can call to report harassment, threats of violence, aggressive behavior, or anything else that causes concern. On October 19th, students and staff will be encouraged to wear orange in honor of Unity Day, which encourages everyone to unite around kindness, support, and inclusion. And the last week of the month will kick off the 9th annual Stand Up, Speak Out video competition. Submissions are due in January, and winners will be announced at the elementary, middle, and high school levels. Bullying Prevention Month activities will be shared on social media under the hashtag SpeakOutWCPSS. It takes all of us to create school environments free of bullying and harassment. Bullying Prevention Month should be a reminder that we do have a duty to stand up and speak out to protect all of our students. Thank you. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. I'll also add that it's LGBT History Month and International Walk to School Month. I had the and I also want to recognize that tonight at sunset begins Yom Kippur, and so I want to wish a good year to our members of our community that are celebrating or this holiday this evening. Vice Chair Haggerty.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. I'll keep my comments brief because it turns out content-wise, the superintendent and the chair addressed most of the areas I was going to speak about. But to connect the two, if anyone, students or staff or families in the district, is concerned about bullying, and as it can also lead to mental trauma and questions about suicide and suicidal ideation, please know that there is help out there. There are resources for you, for your family, that are confidential. Please take advantage of these resources. We stigmatize. I'll just say it, we do stigmatize questions of mental health in our community. We tend to perceive these as weaknesses. I know I know just like the male culture tends to, not want to admit any need for help, particularly, when it comes to suicidal ideation or questions of mental health. But there are resources available, particularly for our LGBTQ youth. The Trevor Project has many resources to reach out there. But anybody that is experiencing mental trauma, please reach out, because your life is worth living. There are toll-free confidential helplines available through many different sources. And again, I just want to encourage everyone out there that there is hope out there. And please don't abandon that hope. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Scott.
Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Haggerty, for highlighting that. And here in the Wake County Public School System, we do have the tip line, which people can report anonymously or even request a callback regarding a concern about any type of situation. That number is, if you look up the Safe Schools tip line, it's 919-856-1911. And I believe that our security department also has posters that are available for schools if they want to post those in places for students to see, restrooms or near front offices or student or school counselor offices and so forth. So definitely thank you for highlighting that very important information. I really want to keep my comments brief tonight. I'm looking forward to our information item. And thank you, Chairman Haffey, for talking about the school Walk to School month. I was invited by Wendell Elementary to walk to school. They're also one of our communities where people can drive golf courses. Not courses, that would be very hard. Drive golf carts. So that but I'm really excited to join them on their walk to school next week. And that concludes my comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Martin.
Thank you. Looking forward to celebrating our Principal of the Year coming up, and Assistant Principal and Principal of the Year coming up this Thursday. So really looking forward to that. Want to thank Susan Pulliam and Glenn Carrozza for coming out to our BAC last night. Had a really good discussion about the student assignment. And a particular thanks to them for really working at the discussion of the why, not just here we're, there's the mechanics, but really looking at the why. And I think that was very well received. I want to highlight an issue raised by one of the parents at one of my schools, and that's kind of the concern about the inequities of PTAs across the district. And we've talked about that variously at the board meeting. PTAs are independent organizations, as they should be. At the same time, some schools, PTAs can build a whole playground, and in other schools, doing good if you get the team together to distribute mulch. So I raised that because it led to some very good discussion at the BAC, but I think it's something that we need to continually think about as a district. How do we, it's not just as a district, really, it's as a community, how do we make sure that all schools are resourced and have the community support that a PTA really can give? So I just want to highlight that issue that was raised. COVID numbers, it does look like we have, knock on wood, passed the fall peak. Numbers are starting to come down. The week of 9/18, there were 244 students and 86 staff. The week of 9/25, there were 105 students and 55 staff. So that's still a lot of staff out of their normal expected jobs. The student numbers are about half what they were last year. Staff numbers are about twice what they were last year. So students are doing better, staff not as good. Part of the reason I raised that is, based on the past trends, we're coming down into a valley. We probably should expect a valley between now and about the end of December, based on past trends. And then it's likely to peak for late December, early January. When things start getting better, it's easy for everybody to relax and say, you don't need to worry about things anymore. But what we do in this decreasing time will impact what will happen come late December and January. So get your flu shots, get your COVID vaccinations, work at good practices now, good precautions now, because that will minimize the challenges that we're likely to have come late December and January. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson-Hustler.
Thank you. I will certainly echo my board members that most of acknowledgement of the awareness months have been taken care of. And so I will just note that while it is important that we acknowledge each community and our roles within our schools, the awareness months are really designed to draw our attention and pay close attention, and sometimes just do something special or make a special acknowledgement that you hear and see the person. So while you've heard it's Disability Awareness Month, Custodian Appreciation Week, excuse me, I'll just ask that you take all of those into consideration as you go about your daily duties. And sometimes a smile makes all the difference in all of these awareness months. So please be sure to acknowledge it. And I echo the sentiments. This is one of the biggest shifts in District 2 regarding our enrollment and assignment process. And so I will encourage people in District 2 who did not attend the BAC to hear the staff updates, the whys, as you noted. Please be sure to log on online tomorrow at 6 p.m. is the virtual session that will include District 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Carter.
Thank you. And I feel like I'm echoing everything with the awareness months, but I do appreciate drawing light on that. And there's just one more I wanted to add. It was Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I know I had two former coworkers who went through it, and my mom is a breast cancer survivor, and I know we have many others who are in our schools and families and community members who are impacted. And I just say, keep up the fight. There is plenty of hope. I wanted to mention with the Bullying Awareness Month in particular, I know we do a lot, and there's still, I just feel like so much work left to be done with social media and phones with our students. And I've just seen so much damage that can be done. And I hope folks, not only students, but adults as well, will take time before making a comment on social media or posting something about how that could possibly impact, not necessarily if it's on your page, but it might not be you're thinking that it would impact someone else, but it could, and just be mindful of that. Switching gears a little bit, I love athletics, so I'll start there. Attended a few football games, Cary High and Apex High, which is a long-time rivalry. And it was interesting. I go and folks, I try to blend in, and they're like, oh, who's your kid? And I'm like, well, I kind of tell them who I am, and I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of in a tough position. I'm on this side for this half, and then I'm going to the other side because I don't want to be seen as taking any school over the other. But it was a great game. The Green Hope game, like others, got moved to Thursday last week. It was their homecoming game. And I was impressed with how many folks were still out there, the wind and the cool weather. I mean, they were shaking it up. So it was great to see that. And the bands, which I always enjoy, and just seeing their performances continue to add different things to it at each football game. And I did have the opportunity to support West Cary Middle School at one of their football games. That was a trek where the football field is over there. So it was an interesting nature walk is what I call it. And I have had the first performance at Cary High School. They had Clue this past week, and it was just awesome. They did not work for many weeks on it, but they sold out all of their shows. And with the weather and things getting canceled Friday, they moved it, ended up having 2 on Saturday, so they got all 4 shows in. And I just wanted to give a huge shout out to Mrs. McCormick, their director, and all of those students. It was one of those shows where 1 minute you might be, I literally jumped a few times in my seat, and then a few seconds later I'm falling out laughing. These kids and I shouldn't call them kids, I guess. These students, I still think of them as kids, high schoolers, have just amazing talent. It's just great to see them be able to play all the different roles in the different performance. And I want to say thank you to the community for selling out those shows. And I mean, showing up and supporting those students. And I know last board meeting I highlighted some high school performance dates, and this time I wanted to highlight East Cary Middle School. They're having a performance of Murders in the Air, and it's an audience interactive murder mystery comedy, and it's October 17th through 20th at 7 p.m. And I just encourage folks to come on out. I know it'll be a great show. I can already just say it's going to be. It's $5. Please come out. The tickets are for sale. Let's show up for those students. And I will close with a reminder that October 24th at 6 p.m. at Apex High School, that is District 9's next back meeting, and that will be, staff will be there to address, at that time we'll be on draft 2 and presenting information about that. And I encourage folks to come out. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Waters.
Thank you, Chairman Haffey, and thank you to everyone who has acknowledged our need to celebrate members of our communities through different awareness months. And I want to just really acknowledge the great opportunity that District 4 had to gather together at our recent BAC meeting. And thanks to our new chair, Tamara Oyejide, who is an Enloe and Ligon parent, for leading the efforts to get us all together. It was a great turnout, and so glad to see so many school communities represented and so many parents. And thank you, as Dr. Martin has said, to Susan Pulliam and Glenn Carosa for such a informative presentation as we talk about student enrollment and student assignment as we move forward. And looking forward to Principal of the Year, Assistant Principal of the Year as well this week. And I had a chance to spend some time at Bug Elementary with Dr. Williams, and such a delight to be able to be at Bug and to walk the halls with Dr. Williams. She commands such respect and adoration from the school community, so I really enjoyed that time to be there. And also saw one of my favorite art teachers from a number of years ago. Mr. Quentin Neal was one of my son's art teachers a number of years ago, so I enjoyed that opportunity to connect there. And so many good things going on in our school communities. Conn Elementary had a wonderful family engagement night at a local restaurant. When I pulled up, I said, there is nowhere to park. And so it was just really lovely to see so many families coming out and connecting in that way. And I had a chance to visit with a community partner who does some work in District 4, but this work was actually focused at Millbrook Elementary. The organization is called Neighbor to Neighbor, and they do a lot of work with our Hispanic and Latino families to increase literacy. And so I really enjoyed the opportunity to connect there. And we had a really kind of good moment at the end of our time together. We looked at some of the books that they had read, and it reminded me of a book that I had read when my son was doing virtual learning, and it was called Esperanza Rising. And so I really enjoyed that book, and it just was a good reminder to me that when children see themselves reflected in books, it helps the members of that community, but it also helps members of other communities to be able to bond and connect in a very special way. So I enjoyed having that time to reflect on that book and that conversation. And I'm so glad that we are continuing to have dialogue around mental health. I took my son for a wellness visit recently, and I was glad to see as a part of that process was a mental health screening. And so as we continue to see so many stresses and so many very difficult circumstances in our society, it's very important that we continue to check on each other and to ask questions and to make sure that we're okay. So very glad to see those conversations continuing to happen. And so I'm just really grateful for all the work that is going on across Wake County and all of our schools, and very excited to see what else we will be doing in the next few weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Waters. Can we get a motion to approve the meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the meeting agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Okay, we now move on to our information item, which comes out of academic advancement, and that is recognition of Indigenous Peoples Day. We have Mr. Drew Cook, Ms. Shanika Moore-Lawrence, Mr. J.D. Freeman, Vice President of the Wake County Indian Education Parent Committee, and I see Ms. Gwen Locklear there as well, and we know you're a bit of the glue of this whole program. So thank you, Ms. Gwen, for being here.
Thank you, Ms. We are pleased to be with you this evening to dedicate a few minutes on a busy agenda to honor and recognize Indigenous Peoples Day, which this year falls on Monday, October the 10th. As you may know, Indigenous Peoples Day is a holiday that states and municipalities throughout the United States celebrate to honor Native American peoples and commemorate their histories and cultures. It is celebrated each year on the second Monday in October. The Wake County Board of Education and the Wake County Public School System, with support from the Wake County Indian Education Parent Committee, officially recognizes the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day in our district. Many of you may recall that the board passed a formal resolution to that effect 2 years ago in October of 2020. It is important to share the significance of people and events on Indigenous Peoples Day, and it's probably even more important to ensure that relevant learning and opportunities for students are integrated into classrooms throughout the school year. I'll note that this evening's presentation is really part one of two, as we plan to be back in November to share and highlight additional information, resources, and activities connected to National Native American Heritage Month in November. In the meantime, this evening I'd like to introduce two people who are helping to lead this work that you may not have met before. First is Dr. Shanika Moore-Lawrence, who joined the Academics Department in our district in July as our new Senior Director for K-12 Instructional Supports. Dr. Moore-Lawrence will highlight a few notable facts of interest and also share a little bit about the Indian Education Grant Program, which her office helps to coordinate and support. Also with us this evening is Mr. J.D. Freeman, who currently serves as the Vice President of the Wake County Indian Education Parent Committee. Mr. Freeman will share a little bit about the work and focus of that committee and some of the resources and support that they provide to our students and to our families. And I'll also share a little bit of local and regional historical information that we think the board and our audience will find to be quite interesting and informative. And Ms. Mahaffey, I'd be remiss if I didn't also draw attention, even though she doesn't like attention being drawn to her, Ms. Gwen Locklear, who is here with us this evening, longtime district coordinator for Indian education, a staunch advocate for this work, for those students, for those families. She was also a strong supporter as a parent at the high school that I happened to work at for many years. And I can't say enough about the work that she's done. She's recently retired from her position. But as you can see, we're excited that she's willing to come back on a voluntary basis and support the work in a different capacity moving forward. But Ms. Locklear, thank you for all the work that you've done over the years and for being here this evening. So with that introduction, I'll turn the presentation over to Dr. Moore-Lawrence and then to Mr. Freeman. Thank you again for your support and also for the opportunity to share.
Thank you, Mr. Cook. Good evening, Board Chair, Superintendent Moore, and board members. It is a great pleasure to stand before you to celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. As we honor Indigenous people in our schools and communities, it is noteworthy to recognize that the number of Indigenous people in the United States is estimated at between 2.5 and 6 million, of which around 20% live in American Indian areas or Alaska Native villages. California has the largest Native population. New York is the city with the largest Native population. 2021 marked the first time a U.S. president officially recognized Indigenous Peoples Day, and October 10th is a day to honor Indigenous people, their resilience, and their contributions to American society throughout history, even as they faced assimilation, discrimination, and genocide spanning generations. In Wake County Public School System, we are committed to ensuring that our American Indian and Alaska Native students have programming designed to address their unique cultural, language, and academic needs. Funding is used to assist students with sharpening their academic skills, providing them with enrichment programming, and supporting culturally responsive activities. In K-12 instructional supports, we have an Indian Education Program Coordinator, who temporarily is Mrs. Gwen Locklear, who works with stakeholders, including the Wake County Indian Education Parent Committee, to develop programming that's relevant, effective, and impactful. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Mr. James J.D. Freeman, who is our Vice President of the Parent Committee. Thank you, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you, Dr. Moore-Lawrence, and thank you, Board, for having me here. Excuse me. My name is J.D. Freeman. I am from Apex, North Carolina. I have two daughters in Wake County Public Schools. My oldest daughter, Lenora, Get that right. Sophie, my oldest daughter Sophie is at Lufkin Road Middle, and my youngest, Lenora, is at Olive Chapel Elementary. I'm originally from Robeson County area and identify as a Lumbee Indian. Once again, thank you to the Wake County Board and thank you from the Wake County American Indian Parent Committee. The recognition of Indigenous People Day is an honor, and we are grateful that Wake County is making such progressive steps on our behalf. North Carolina has over 140,000 Native Americans represented by 8 tribes, 7 of which are state recognized, and the one federally recognized tribe is the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indian. The state recognized tribes are the Coharie Indians, Halawa-Saponi, Lumbee, Meherrin, Occaneechi Band of Saponi Nation, the Saponis, as well as the Walkamal-Siouan. The history and traditions of our tribes are slowly eroding with each passing generation, and we are grateful to have Wake County Indian Education Program to assist with the preservation of our culture and also to spread the knowledge of our rich North Carolina history. I'd like to read a quote from the City of Raleigh's Land Acknowledgment, something they put out recently for their upcoming Dix Park Powwow. The land that we are on is the ancestral land of many indigenous tribes. Raleigh itself sits on the border of Tuscarora and Siouan territory. Over the past 14,000 years, this area was used for family life, nourishment, stewardship, justice, ceremony, and healing. For the past 500 years, Native American communities from this region and across North Carolina have demonstrated resilience and resistance in the face of sustained displacement and removal and complex, traumatic, and violent efforts to separate indigenous people from their culture and their land. As I said earlier, I currently live in Apex and recently learned a rich history of the incorporated friendship area there where white, black, and Native Americans all live together in peace. And this was before the Civil War, and I thought that was a really good story. And also recently learned that the Tuscarora organized a powwow there for the local leaders, and it was well received, of course, with good food. That's always a good step, right? There are no tribe homelands directly located in Wake County, but instead a conglomerate representation of local and national tribes make up the Wake County Indian Education Student Program. It was started in 1986 and since 2001 has been at Garner at the Avery Street Training Center where Ms. Gwen has done a lot of wonderful work for us here. Currently 238 students are enrolled representing 59 tribal nations. The Wake County Indian Education Program is a federally funded Title VI grant open to any kindergarten through high school enrolled in Wake County Public Schools. We believe our numbers could be higher than the 238. So one of our goals is to increase knowledge of this program and get kids to fill out their 506 forms, as our grant is also based on the number of enrollments that we have. So the more kids we have, the better their grant is, and that's one of our goals. As a member of the parent committee, we serve as an advisory role to Wake County through the Indian Education Coordinator. We assist with the development and operation of program offerings. We review the budget and assist with the annual application requirements and also conduct regular reoccurring meetings. Service available for enrolled participants include summer camps, tutoring, ACT, SAT preparation, cultural programming and crafts, as well as there's a garden that Ms. Quinn maintains and helping to promote healthy eating. And, I recently also learned out that another benefit of this program is that American Indians have the highest high school dropout rate in North Carolina as well as the nation. So a lot of the work that we're doing is helping these high school students find their path, still stay connected, but encourage them to keep proceeding on with their education. Some of our cultural programs that we have performed in the past include obviously a ribbon shirt. I made this, so I was really happy to pull this together. As ribbon skirts for the ladies, we've created turtle rattles, corn necklaces, also have dancing and drumming classes, gourd classes, as well as many other activities that sponsors are found. And we also just have a cookout sometimes, which is always good. But we also pull in some of our mix of native foods such as chicken bog and other various things that we eat back home. So once again, thank you for having us here, and I'd like to end my talk today, just highlighting some upcoming local events that are coming up. This weekend at Dix Park, there's an intertribal powwow on Saturday. It's almost an all-day event. Try to get there by 12:30 for the grand entrance. That's a really good thing to see. Also on 10 October, as discussed earlier, is Apex Indigenous Peoples Day. I was fortunate enough to go to the Apex Town Board meeting last week, and they also did a proclamation for Indigenous Peoples Day, and this will be my third time serving as the MC for that event, where we have dancing, singing, and other events that take place. And the final events are at the North Carolina History Museum. On 18 November is Education Day. There's live virtual events being held there. Students are able to register to attend that online. Then also on the 19th of November is more of a music and dancing on the plaza where everyone's welcome to attend. So once again, thank you, and we appreciate the Wake County Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Freeman. As a district, it's our hope and intent to implement instructional practices and provide resources that are aligned to our stated core beliefs. Specifically, core belief number 5, which states the Board of Education, Superintendent, and all staff value a diverse school community that is inviting, respectful, inclusive, flexible, and supportive. This work is part of our district's ongoing efforts to ensure that our work is inclusive and supportive of all parts of our community. Specifically, our hope is to ensure that all students and families see themselves lifted up in a positive light within our district. Core belief number 3, which states that well-supported, highly effective, and dedicated principals and teachers and staff are essential to success for all students. By intentionally sharing resources and educating school staff and leaders on the culture and heritage of our students, we will, in the long term, create a greater likelihood that school staff will be able to create meaningful instructional activities where every student accurately sees their culture and heritage reflected in their learning. It is important to share the significance of people and events on Indigenous Peoples Day, and the learning is also integrated throughout the entire school year, wherever and whenever there are opportunities for connections with state learning standards and curriculum resources. To that end, the district has provided resources and instructional materials to support this work in classrooms across the district and grade levels, several examples of which are on this slide. And we also want to draw your attention to several of the local events that Mr. Freeman has already highlighted, and we hope that you will join us in celebrating Indigenous People Day and National Native American Heritage Month, which is coming up in November. And speaking of November, we will be coming back next month, as Mr. Cook already shared, with Mr. Freeman and other representatives of our Indian Education Parent Committee to engage in part 2 of our recognition. And if you need any assistance or additional support or more information, you can contact myself, Ms. Locklear, or the parent group that Mr. Freeman is the vice president of. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. We are looking forward to seeing the work that you do in November. I think I remember the turtle rattles that your daughters had last time we were here. And thank you for your work on the parent committee, and certainly extend that to Dr. Emanuel and Ms. Key as well, as your fellow officers. And Ms. Gwen, we every time you don't want to be acknowledged, but yes, we know how important you are in getting this community together and making them feel like there's a part of their home and their heritage, even if they're far away from their ancestral lands. So thank you for being that person and that guide as people come to Wake County and they find home in different places.
Thank you.
Thank you. We now move on to public comment. Public comment is accepted in video, written, and in-person formats. Members of the public are welcome to offer comments or criticism directed at substantive ideas, actions, or procedures of the board and individual board members. The laws and policies of North Carolina provide that issues or concerns involving individual personnel matters are confidential and therefore not appropriate for public comment settings. Concerns related to personnel issues may be addressed through the applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. Those offering comments to the board, including students, may discuss issues and matters of general concern, but should refrain from discussing confidential student information. Concerns related to confidential student matters may be addressed through applicable WCPSS personnel, the grievance policy, or other applicable policies. We have written comments as part of our public comment portion of this evening's agenda. These comments are linked on the same online agenda that we are using for tonight's meeting. That agenda, as well as guidelines for those wishing to submit comments for future meetings, can be found at the school district's website, wcpss.net, under the tab labeled School Board. We have 7 written comments from members of the public. Those topics include bell times, transparency, theater booster guidelines, experiential learning, athletic boosters, etiology of illness, and special education and equity. For those of you who are here for public comment, during your time in public comment, you may speak for up to 3 minutes. There will be a green light when you begin. A yellow light will illuminate at the podium when there are 30 seconds remaining in your time, and then a red light will signal your time is up. In the interest of maintaining civility and decorum, speakers are encouraged to address their comments to the Board of Education and to refrain from personal attacks and insults directed at the board, individual board members, staff, or members of the general public. Please remain at the podium during your speaking time. Any materials you wish to share with the board should be handed to the board attorney, located right there, Mr. Blumberg, either before or after your comments. Our first speaker is Carrie Bly.
Hello again. I waited for a really long time for your Student Achievement Committee that happened last week, and it was disappointing to watch. What I want to caution you about is that it sounds like we might have a reset button on the curriculums we've been using for 4 to 5 years, and I don't want you to start from the beginning and just call this a mulligan. Because the theology that if you fix the teacher to follow a certain theology, you'll fix student comprehension and engagement level has not worked, and it's proven itself a poor plan for far too long. It's an uneducated, ill-informed diagnosis, and as I stated in my last email, you no longer need other research, you are the research. So I look forward to the next couple meetings to see how it's going. I will give you credit that you had your first Open Up teacher here, and while she seemed like the most fun, energetic woman, her words were very telling, and she spoke about all the ways that we can exit ticket students so that a teacher can engage whether 30-plus students got the lesson for that day. But I wrote down one thought so I would not forget it. Can a student ever decide if they got something? Can they ever decide for themselves and advocate that they need explicit instruction before they get too lost in comprehension? Because y'all know these kids don't have a clue what explicit instruction is or what direct instruction is. They don't even know that they need to ask for it. They don't understand that they're not getting it. And it sounds like you're advising teachers to wait to use explicit instruction in class and visual learning resources as a last resort. And what I've been advocating for is I think they need it from day one, and I as a mother need it from day one. I had to leave the room when I heard the teacher state a really great reality. She said, she highlighted that kids sometimes need me to just tell them straight what it is I have to do, because sometimes with Open Up, it's very discovery-based, which is fantastic. That's the way we want kids to go. We want them to think for themselves. But sometimes kids just need a little extra push at the end to solidify their thinking, because they've got all these ideas, and maybe they just need somebody to be like, here's the period, here's the point, and then they kind of put it all together. And I had to leave the room when she said that, because y'all aren't going to see me cry again. It wasn't until that moment that I'd heard anyone speak that truth out loud in this boardroom in 3 years. Now imagine being a student and parents that have been told for the past 5 years that that notion was incorrect, that by us asking for organized math reference materials, we were working against the new way of doing math to the academic detriment of our students, even when we saw they weren't getting it. Shame on us. So I look forward again to seeing how you're doing, and I'm watching you. I've got an email queued up so that you can watch your last curriculum implementation meeting that was on November 18th in 2018, and I'll send that to you tonight. Thank you.
Julie Page.
Good evening. Friendly reminders, just a mom, not a politician, not a domestic terrorist. I have several topics of concern to address tonight. Number one, school reassignment. I have reviewed the parent feedback forum. The overwhelming majority is negative because it does not make sense. Students need stability that you robbed them of for over 2 years. I see longer bus routes, longer car routes, isolation from friends and community, all resulting in depression among these kids. New schools, move the kids. No new schools, move the kids. What happens when new schools open up for 2024? Will you be shifting the kids again? Our kids have suffered at your whims long enough. Number two, Superintendent Moore's contract. What could possibly be the reason for wanting to extend this to 2026? What has so greatly improved to warrant it? Since taking office in 2018, academic proficiencies have declined. Staffing is at an all-time low. Transportation is a disaster, yet you reward her. Nowhere else in life is this acceptable. We see this for what it is, a deliberate ploy to try to protect your hired hand from being terminated when a new board takes place, just like 2020. Number three, accelerated reader. Why was this program canceled? It is the primary reason that my older son would read at night so that he could meet his reading goal. I beg you to bring it back to elementary schools. Help with learning loss. Don't add to it. Don't blame funding. There's plenty of COVID money burning holes in your pockets. DEI and SEL programs. Why are we spending so much money on these? Do you have any evidence that they will increase proficiency outcomes? Is the school system supposed to teach facts or feelings? Instead of focusing on educating children, this school board seems hell-bent on being a trendy boutique for the far-left radical extremist social movements. Number five, library books. I will say this yet again. Parents are not banning books. Curating reading materials for age appropriateness is not banning books. Asking for parental consent or content restrictions is not banning books. Giving ratings to reading materials is not banning books. Parents merely want the right to know what is available in school and be given the choice to shield their children from illicit sex acts and obscene language. We restrict content for children on everything else in life. Why not this? There should be no opposition to this by anyone unless you think parents don't have rights. Which brings me to the last topic. Number six, the parent pledge. I sent this all to you. I haven't received it back. What's the hesitation? Is it because it came from Moms for Liberty? If that's the problem, I ask you to reevaluate your thinking. The statement is a very basic one. You either stand with parents or you stand against us. Choose wisely.
Becky Lou Hobbs.
Good evening. Once again, I come before the board, a concerned mother, questioning the priorities of this board. The board continues to make poor financial decisions regarding our budget, focuses on social and political issues at the expense of our children's education, and develops policies and impede the rights of parents to direct the education and upbringing of their children. So let's start with the poor financial decisions. Why, a month before elections, is the board revising Superintendent Moore's contract again? Are you afraid of losing control? Why are you extending the contract of someone who has only produced declining student proficiency rates? Per the website, Ms. Moores started in 2011 as Deputy Superintendent for Academic Advancement. In other words, responsible for academics. In 2018, became superintendent. But proficiency rates has only worsened since she has directed academics in Wake County schools. For example, third grade reading scores, when she started, was about 30% not proficient. Now, they're about 42% not proficient. And when she started with third grade math, non-proficiency rates were at 16%, and now they're at 50%. It's deplorable. Do not burden Wake County families. Do not extend her contract. Now, looking at today, you did some discussion regarding the strategic plan and reviewed the new equity policy. Time doesn't allow me to go into the details, but this presentation didn't focus on quality education and quality curriculum. Instead, it focused on equity. In other words, equal outcomes. Presentation also mentioned graduation, which is currently at 91%. And the board has bragged about increasing those graduation rates. But I ask again, how can graduation rates be improving when proficiency scores are plummeting? Students are getting promoted and passed to the next grade who have not mastered their current grade. This board's focus on strategic plans, but any plan that does not focus on quality education to all children is not a plan. It's a political agenda. So what's the purpose of public education? It's not state education. It is a resource guaranteed by the North Carolina Constitution to assist parents in providing quality education to their children. The more this board focuses on political agendas and usurping parents' roles, the worse our children's education has become. No more. Let's get back to using our resources wisely. Use them to provide all of our children the quality education they deserve. I'm Becky Lou Hobbs. You can find out more at beckyforwake.com. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Daniel Grant King.
I would like to say good evening to everyone, including Superintendent Moore, district staff, Chairman Haffey, and fellow board members. I am Mr. Grant King, and as many know that I'm running for the Wake County Board of Education District 4 in November. First of all, I would like to thank district staff, including Dr. Chavis and many others, for speaking with board members today. As the new board policy is being discussed regarding equity and fair opportunity for our students and educators in our schools. However, there is still a lot more that needs to be discussed, but I do agree with most of some of what is being presented thus far, and of course I'll continue to look at it for my own reading. However, on this evening, we've had more examples of people trying to diminish the progress and values of the school system. And let's make something very clear. Each of you have made a sacrifice, and each of you have done the best that you all could do in accordance with what you all are allowed to do within accordance with the law and with the policies that have been set by this school system and by this board. But yet again, we see the far right attacking the progress regarding our academics. Yes, we had a pandemic, but immediately Superintendent Moore and many others worked together and made it crystal clear that it was not going to be easy. But however, we were back in schools, we were back to our normal activities. We will also made some new strides regarding how we do in our academics and how we demonstrate that in our classroom settings. So I am sick and tired of the board not standing up and saying enough is enough regarding these attacks. But yet, what is said about these attacks regarding the progress that's made? None. And yet, as an educator, I must sit back and take these attacks. I am in the classroom each and every day. And yet, what is done? Nothing. So on this evening, I want to make it very clear to each of you, and I urge each of you to please, please do not allow these attacks to continue. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Marianne Wendt.
Board members and staff, thank you for having me today. Several of you mentioned Walk to School Month, and I wanted to take a moment to talk about that. Walking and biking to school is so important to our schools. We have a transportation crisis. We don't have enough drivers. We have buses running double routes. They're often late. And the reality is, back in 1969, almost half of students walked or biked to school, and today it's less than a quarter of that. And the board can take action now to work on that. One thing the board can do is to keep in mind walking and biking during school assignment. It's really critical to protect walk zones around schools. Another thing that the district can do is to develop district-level standardized policies around walking and biking. Right now, the policies that my children are having at our school, my 4 children that walk, are different than the policies that are being experienced by my friends' children at other schools. We need standard policies, and those policies should first of all favor walking and biking. There are safe rules like releasing walkers and bikers before carpool and bus students, and that makes it safer for walkers and bikers and encourages parents to have their kids walk and bike. Working with the municipalities to increase transportation options by making sure sidewalks are safe, that there are crossing guards and crosswalks where necessary also helps. And finally, making sure that those policies favor parent discretion. My 8-year-old is not the same as someone else's 8-year-old, and my 10-year-old isn't the same as someone else's 10-year-old. So making sure that parents' judgment of what's safe for their children is first and foremost the priority. Next week is Walk to School Day. It's called Walking and Rolling this year, which is exciting. And it's October 12th. And I hope every person, not just Board Member Scott, will be walking with at least one of their schools. So you can see the challenges that those schools face in walking and biking, and you can help be part of the solution to address those. Right now, only a third of Wake County elementary schools are registered for Walk and Roll to School Day. And out of 120, it's about 37. That's not enough. We need all of them to encourage walking and biking. That was all I was going to say, but as of today, I felt like I had to say something else. I am so grateful for the respect and courtesy that our board members give every member of our school community, including children with special needs. Today, I watched on a forum as a candidate for one of the seats here called a member of her family a slur. That's unacceptable, and I'm so grateful to all of you for not being like that. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Amanda Lunn.
Hello. It's always easier to get up here and speak towards the negatives. Very rarely do you get the opportunity to hear more of the positives. So I'd like to start with some of that. A couple weeks ago, my youngest daughter, who was diagnosed with cancer when she was just before she was 2, lost an eye. She has an IEP, so we had the yearly IEP meeting. Since the beginning, she's in 5th grade now, since the very beginning, all of her teachers, school staff, have been on board with that. They have gone above and beyond to make sure that she gets the care that she needs in school, the accommodations that she needs. And one person that I would like to highlight is her AIG teacher, who I know some people are very much pro-academics and less of the social emotional learning, but my daughter excels in that. She gets all of the academic stuff. She excels in math. The part that she needs help with is dealing with her anxiety, learning how to deal with her feelings, knowing that she is not alone, knowing that it's safe for her to speak in class and take up space, but also let others take up space. So I appreciate her AIG teacher fostering that kind of community and that kind of conversation. We also just recently, they brought up Indigenous Peoples Day. So I very highly commend you all for honoring that and allowing that discussion, because it really is a brilliant discussion for them to also recognize various perspectives. My other daughter missed school a couple weeks ago. She was sick. They were making clouds. She was very upset that she wasn't able to go to school because in her science class they were making clouds. And all I could think about is, we like to complain. But to be honest, this school district provides so much more than I ever had growing up. I have no idea how to make clouds. From various learning opportunities to the tech that is available, the electives, the clubs. I've worked with some of the high school students and middle school students in some of the charitable organizations I work with, and they're some really, really smart people. They have such leadership skills, and that will serve them so much more in their life. All of those critical reasoning skills will be essential to them being the best adults that they can be. Dr. Martin, I know a couple of times ago you were spoken towards about the COVID numbers. I do appreciate you sharing that because that is a variable in some of the staffing shortages. And as a parent, it allows me to know that you all are thinking about all of the variables so that you can do the best that you can for our children. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Mike Nutt.
Good evening. Thank you for your time. I'm thankful for the district putting time and effort into the drafting of Educational Policy 1150. It seems that instructional materials have been on the mind of those who are working on it. However, the new suggestion in this policy for how to treat inclusive supplemental instructional materials still leaves room for Don't Say Gay in Wake County Public Schools. Section B of Policy 3200 on the selection of instructional materials states, teachers may use additional supplemental materials, provided materials are, et cetera, with the understanding that the principal retains authority to alter or amend a teacher's selection or selection process. So under existing Policy 3200, principals can establish on a school-by-school basis which queer kids and families get to see themselves reflected in the materials. We saw this in District 2 last spring when the principal at Valentine Elementary decided that they didn't like the way someone on a flashcard looked. It seemed that the current board members didn't feel any obligation to step in and protect inclusive environments at that school, thereby demonstrating that this is an area which needs more attention under district-wide policy. Back to the latest draft of the Educational Equity Policy, which doesn't address this loophole. In Section C, Commitments to Equity, Point 3, it says that the district will endeavor to identify and provide high-quality instructional materials and methods that represent the rich diversity of our nation, respect the legitimacy of different cultures, and empower students to value diverse perspectives. These materials and methods are also appropriate for the maturity levels and abilities of the students and address the spectrum of learning styles. So not only does this leave a principal's choice to implement Don't Say Gay in place, it also gives the extreme right even more leverage to claim moral outrage, because the appropriate for maturity levels of students phrase, well then every mama bear in the room is going to be up here telling you that their 12th grade kids aren't mature enough to see pictures of people who don't look like them. What this policy needs to say very clearly is that a teacher's chosen instructional materials cannot be removed from the classroom for the sole reason that they represent people who have a right to exist. And it needs to go one step further and say that inclusive materials are protected by the district at all ages down to pre-K. Dr. Chavis mentioned some statistics earlier that painted a good picture of teachers' own ratings of themselves and being competent to support equity in the classroom. But that's not what queer students are reporting. And the survey released by the Campaign for Southern Equality recently, 24% of respondents reported not receiving support or resources related to their LGBT identity at school. This results in a 56% rate of respondents experiencing suicidal ideation and 14% attempting suicide at least once. To break this heartbreaking cycle, we need bold action from our school board. We need you to be at the vanguard of creating inclusive environments for our students, down to the smallest ones.
Our next speaker is Crystal Barrett.
Good evening. My name is Christelle Barron, and I'm a 24-year veteran teacher. I grew up in a time and got my education degree when we were taught that color shouldn't be seen in the classroom. The term colorblind might be familiar to some of you about my age. Students were just students, no matter where they came from, and we were supposed to treat them all equally and celebrate our commonalities. My first job was in rural Ohio, teaching students who looked similar to me, but yet had various socioeconomic backgrounds, so my lack of diversity training wasn't really a huge deal in my early years. However, I interviewed for a position near Cleveland and was asked if I was drawn to be an inner city teacher, and I was kind of like a little vague with my response because I thought, I'm just drawn to be a teacher. It doesn't matter where I go or who I teach. Thankfully, I didn't get that job, where I would have brought my unconscious biases into the classroom and I would have been truly unprepared to teach diverse students. I'm so thankful that my children have had a different experience in Wake County Public Schools. I love that Wake County has magnet programs that are aimed at diversifying schools, that we celebrate our uniqueness, that we offer equity trainings with uncomfortable conversations that may help us be better for our students, that we offer instructional materials that allow us to have access to stories that can grow empathy, and that you are willing to do the hard work of putting an equity policy into writing. Today, on the 4th day of LGBTQ History Month and Disability Awareness Month, I am here filled with hope that this equity policy discussed earlier today will come to fruition with the updated inclusive language of our LGBTQ students, our special education students, our English language learners. This policy has the potential to define how WCPSS views equity. We all know that equity is not the same as equal, where everything is the same no matter what you bring to the table. I'm sure you've all seen the image of the two kids picking apples with the same size ladder, yet one kid still can't reach the apples. Equity is making sure they both have the tools they need to succeed. How equitable would it be for a student with a visual impairment to be asked to read in the same way as their peers? How equitable is it if male students are given a safe environment free of discrimination based on gender, while our female students continue to have lower performance in male-dominated fields and subjects, and our transgender students fear exclusion, bathroom, and simple acceptance? It would be terribly inequitable to ask our LGBTQ plus students to refrain from saying gay, while our heterosexual students are allowed to be their true selves. Our students need to feel safe, they need to feel accepted and seen, and they need to know that the adults in their lives are willing to stand up and advocate for those needs. No matter what happens this November, we will still have students who are LGBTQ plus, have special education needs, have language learning needs, and are facing a whole list of other identity intersections that may layer to contribute to systems of oppression. Just give the kid a taller ladder.
Our next speaker is Amanda Cohen.
Don't realize how short you are until you're up here. Good evening. My name is Amanda Cohen, and I'm the parent of, show my bias here, the most amazing little girl. Not quite in the school system yet, but is soon to be. Very excited about that. I'm here today regarding my concern about, I'm just going to be as plain as I can, the hate-filled rhetoric that I have seen infiltrate this room as well as social media platforms. I've watched as candidates who might soon themselves comprise this board promote and espouse lies, misinformation, and bigotry. I've listened and read as they've, in their own words, called those in the LGBTQ community groomers and pedophiles, or for simply wanting to be represented and exist. I've seen them make statements wanting to get back to basics, ensure an all-inclusive curriculum, and be a voice for children. How can we as parents trust someone to promote inclusive curriculum when they themselves have spent years devoted to doing the opposite? How can we trust them to be a voice for all of our children when they actively use theirs to depict a portion of those children, as well as their families, as less than worthy of representation, belonging, and inclusion? Those in a position of power, be it as a parent, as a board member, should understand that words matter, no matter where they're spoken. We all have the freedom of speech. I am very grateful for that, but it does not exclude you from accountability, especially when you are asking for our votes. So yes, your personal feelings on historically marginalized and vulnerable groups do matter and are relevant. I would love to get back to basics, focus on academics, and give education to our students. I don't think there's anyone in this room that wouldn't like that. I would love for our worries to be solely focused on teacher pay, retention, funding, class size, and giving every single student the tools they need and deserve. But how can we expect our students to focus on academics, to get back to basics, or receive education and grow when they aren't even allowed to be comfortable in their own skin at school? We can do better. We can support those who will put in the work to improve our schools for all students, not just those that they look, live, and love like. Thank you very much for your time.
Our next speaker is Robin Livingston. Robin Livingston.
Hi. What she said, basically. No, I have a son who's a ninth grader at Wake Young Men's Leadership Academy, and I just wanted to let you know how grateful I am that that school exists. He really struggled in elementary school and had some learning disability issues and all kinds of things. And that school has, with the small class sizes and the small, max capacity at 50 per grade, so it's not overwhelming for him. He's very bright, and he gets a very good education there. He's surrounded by peers who take education seriously. Academics are very high standard. He's going to be going to college in 2 years, which is shocking to me. It's such a great opportunity for kids. And I know that enrollment's coming up for that school pretty soon. So I would encourage anyone who has a son or daughter. Our leadership academies are awesome. I can't say enough about it, and I'm just really grateful that we have that. Just want to let y'all know. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Jessica Lewis.
Good evening. I have a third and fifth grader in Wake County Schools. I am a mom who wants my kids' education to be focused on reading, writing, and math. The pandemic started my son's kindergarten year. This was his first year of normal school and also taking the beginning of grade test. His results came back as non-proficient, but what is more worrisome is that the average of all Wake County students came back as non-proficient in reading and math. I have listened to the Blythe speak numerous times on how the math curriculum is not working for our kids, and parents are unable to help their children without textbooks. You all continue to ignore, and our children suffer because of your ignorance. With these low scores, how can you all sit in those seats and pat yourself on the back for a job well done when our students are failing? Why are you not spending your work sessions talking about the learning loss that has occurred for over 2 years? Parents would think that their elected school board representative would be concerned, but instead you spent your work session today talking about equity. You are more fixated on worrying about being politically correct, or in my opinion, politically incorrect, about our kids' gender, race, and spending dollars on equity programs. You are more worried about not listing the gender of our kids anymore to appease the minority that is offended. What if, as a mom, I would like my children's gender listed back in the school system? Do I not have that right for my children to be correctly identified as the gender they were born as? We as parents do not send our kids to school for indoctrination camp. We send them to learn reading, writing, and math, the basics to help lead them toward a successful future. Take gender and race out of the equation, because I can tell you for a fact that is not going to improve our kids' test scores. Another question, why was spelling taken out of the curriculum? In order to read, our children need to be able to spell and sound out words they are reading. Please consider making it mandatory for all students to take weekly spelling tests, which in return will improve reading scores. Also, I request that you add cursive back into the curriculum so our kids know how to read it, write it, and can actually sign their signature on papers the school sends home asking for their signature. Tonight, you will all be voting on extending Miss Caddy Moore's contract to 2026. I ask you, why would you vote yes for a superintendent who has failed our children, teachers, and parents? Why would you vote yes when our students are not proficient in math or reading? Why would you vote yes for a person making $328,000, but she is not leading our education system in a positive direction? If you vote yes, you are acknowledging You are part of the problem and do not care about our children's failing education. Katie Long is running for School Board District 7. She is running as a mom, not a politician, who will support all children, teachers, and parents. We long for change for a new school board and successful future for our children, November 8th.
Our next speaker is Dee Sellers.
Hey, good evening, everybody. My name is Dee Sellers. My pronouns are they, them. I just wanted to make a quick comment tonight. I took my whole time last time, so I'm going to try and keep it a little shorter. As I said last meeting, my purpose in attending these meetings is to represent myself and other parents who are like me, who are not represented by other parents' rights groups that attend these meetings. My wife and I are parents of a brilliant 10-year-old girl. She owns a lot of books, like a lot of books. I'm still building bookshelves for her. But not every kid has access to a large library in their home, and the books in their school library might be their primary access to books. I don't think that kids with less resources should be limited in their access to information because some parents groups wish to curate the collection of books. A most recent list that I ran across is Martin Luther King Jr. and the March on Washington, Separate is Never Equal, and Ruby Bridges Goes to School, My True Story by Ruby Bridges. I find the curated book list interesting for what history these parents are opposing making visible to our children. So in closing, my belief is that having access to a variety of books on all subjects supports the growth of our children into well-rounded adults. I think kids should have access to difficult materials and be given the chance to think critically about their contents. I think an honest discussion of history benefits everyone, black, white, gay, straight, whoever you are, and that sheltering our kids from the realities of our history is a disservice to our children and to the adults that we're helping them to become. Thank you for letting me speak. As a parent who wants to ensure that kids continue to have access to accurate, if sometimes uncomfortable history, I'm also a parent, and I think I should get to voice that as well. And I just, if we leave race and gender out of the classroom, I think it's important to look at who that's actually leaving out because it's not inclusive of everyone. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Christina Spears.
Good evening. Happy October, Chair Mahaffey, Vice Chair Hagerty, Superintendent Moore, district staff, and board members. I'm Christina Spears, a special education teacher by trade and Wake NCAE's full-time release president. October is a great month of the year as we welcome fall and spooky season. We find ourselves in the middle of Hispanic Heritage Month. We've kicked off LGBTQ History, Disability Awareness Month. We appreciate our principals this month, and we recognize our custodial service workers this week. Fall is a time of change and transition as the leaves fall and the temperature changes. October is considered spooky season because of the aforementioned changes, and some of us celebrate a spooky holiday at the end of the month. This October might feel spooky for WCPSS as well. In today's work session, district staff and board members dug into the strategic plan and continued their discussion on Equity Policy 1150. It can be daunting to create a plan that impacts hundreds of thousands of students, staff, and their families. It can feel scary to begin the courageous work of naming historical disparities, our complicity in those inequalities, and then define the work necessary to disrupt them. It may be spooky to disrupt or interrupt the current state of things for folks who stand to benefit from the current status quo. It can be eerie to connect systemic change to the important work of changing the hearts and minds of individuals. It's haunting to consider how equity work is a long-term project that will continue beyond our lifetimes and find our place in that project now. The important work of revising a strategic plan and an equity policy may feel even scarier in the middle of a race to midterm elections. Though this body is nonpartisan, we would be remiss to say politics in our current socio-political context doesn't impact what happens in this room and in our school system. Otherwise, why would we be drafting an equity policy to disrupt those systems of power? My favorite master teacher, Audre Lorde, says, "I am deliberate and afraid of nothing." I echo Lord and Heather Scott and Monica Johnson-Hostler tonight that we should not be afraid of clear, strong language. We should not feel spooked to move forward with an equity policy because of the discomfort of some. We should be unafraid to implement equitable, just policies and practices. The only thing we have to fear in this moment is allowing the status quo to continue to perpetuate harm against historically and traditionally marginalized students and staff. Based on today's discussion, I'm hopeful that this board and district staff will choose to be deliberate and fearless in the face of spooky things like poverty, racism, sexism, ableism, and homophobia. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Tracy Taylor.
Good evening. I wish that the board would be deliberate and be courageous and admit that the policies that they've implemented in the last 4 or 5 years have not been working. I wish that the board members would be courageous and say that the curriculum that they used, as Ms. Bly has been coming years now saying wouldn't work, that you would actually admit that it didn't. Oh, wait, you did, I think, recently. But you don't admit your failure to what you have done to the students for the last 4 or 5 years. You talk about how you want to build community. I think I heard that in Dr. Martin's statement tonight. I want to ask you how reassignment is building community within schools. How is reassignment allowing the students who are marginalized, who do build a relationship with teachers and staff over years in schools, how do you think that affects their families? Do you think that that helps them? If you want children to succeed, you need to build the community around them. That doesn't mean you uproot them every 2 or 3 years. And if you're going to use busing or opening new schools as the reason and rationale for your decision, I'd like to ask why it is that you're moving students from no transportation zones. I'm so thankful that Ms. Want was here tonight to talk about arts and SARTs, active routes to schools, safe routes to schools. You won't allow students to walk or ride or roll to a lot of the schools that are within that distance. Instead, you insist on busing them. And you create this illusion that we're going to use busing as the reason that we're going to reassign students, and a school whose ex-principal saw a very huge decline in the student numbers, I'll just say. When you take students from these no transportation zones and then you move them to a school that's a mile or 2 further down the road, that is not helping busing. That's making the problem worse. You're so incredibly short-sighted. You are not building a community in the school. When you're not building a community in the school, the children suffer. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Monica Ruiz.
Hi, my name is Monica Ruiz, and I'm running for Wake County School Board District 2. It is time for a Bill of Rights for parents. We have pressing issues like learning loss and school safety. Not only do we need curriculum transparency as part of the Parent Bill of Rights, but we also must stipulate clear policies and procedures that are the same in all schools and not left up to each principal to decide. We need a clear policy regarding the use of bathrooms and locker rooms. We must have separate bathrooms based on biological sex, and if there is a child experiencing gender dysphoria, a one-person bathroom should be made available. Safety is essential for all of our students. A female could be sexually assaulted, or a male could be wrongfully accused of a sexual assault. Are we going to be the next Loudoun County, Virginia? Do we want to have to face parents and explain why there was a sexual assault in a bathroom because Wake County failed to address this? Do you realize that having a male in a restroom with a woman is an infringement on the First Amendment as it pertains to religion? Are you aware that in the religion of Islam, a Muslim female cannot share a restroom with a male? Is Wake County ready for the lawsuits? As of now, there's nothing on the books that stipulates that a parent must be notified about their child experiencing gender dysphoria or wanting to use different pronouns. I've heard from some teachers in Wake County that they have been dissuaded from informing the parents of this. Considering that the rate of suicide ideation and attempted suicide is high for people experiencing gender dysphoria, it is paramount that parents are notified. What about protecting girls' sports? We need a clearly defined policy that protects girls' participation in sports. Ultimately, we need a parent's Bill of Rights that has a clear discipline policy, assures personal privacy when toileting or changing clothes, informs parents of personal issues related to their child's mental and physical safety, and a curriculum that is transparent and accessible to parents. We need a board that is brave enough to stand up to the woke mob and be a voice for families. I am a teacher's voice for families. Monica Ruiz for Wake.
Our next speaker is Renee Stegall.
Man, the timing. All right, I'm going to have to split this into two pieces. First, I want to thank you guys for working on an equity policy. If nothing else has become clear in the last several years, it's how critically important it is to have a policy guiding this school system to protect vulnerable students. I hear so often parents, school board candidates demanding that the school board gets back to basics. They mean reading, writing, arithmetic. But equity is foundational. You can't get to reading, writing, or arithmetic until a child is ready to learn. An autistic kid who has been referred to the school resource officer for behaviors that are perfectly within their, forgive me, words fail. That child's not ready to learn if they're now worried about what's going to happen when they see the school resource officer again. A kid who doesn't get to see books with families that look like theirs isn't going to be as interested in reading. Like, imagine how much more fun it is for a kid to be able to see, oh, hey, that family looks like my family, or that kid looks like my brother or sister or whatever, like, sibling that I've got. A kid who has dealt with racial slurs or ableist slurs, as one of our school board candidates used recently, they're not going to be ready to learn. They're not going to be in that emotional headspace. We heard today from a parent whose child suffers with anxiety and really needs help dealing with that problem to be able to learn. All of the issues that you're addressing in this equity policy, they are basic, they are foundational, they are what let us get to reading, writing, and arithmetic. And last, I just want to say, this is difficult. I was abused as a child. I had parents who would have fit right in with the crowd screaming for parents' rights. But what they meant was parents' right over me. That where my rights interfered with what they wanted from me, their rights should be prevailing. Their right to know everything I was doing, their right to control everything I was doing. And God forbid, I still have flashbacks 30 years later to the day my mom found out I told a teacher that she and my dad were fighting. It was that bad. So when we talk about parents' rights, I would say that focus is thoroughly misplaced. The rights we are concerned about, the rights everybody should be concerned about, are the students. Luckily, for most kids, parents' rights and students' rights intersect.
because most parents want what's best for their kid, even if it's not what they maybe had seen for their kid. But students' rights must be paramount, even when the parent doesn't like it. Thank you.
Our next speaker is Michelle Morrow. Michelle Morrow. Our next speaker is Lana Witt.
Good evening. Board members, I've been asked in the past year what motivates me. And as I drove here tonight, I found myself asking again, what possibly motivates you? Is it volunteerism, power, or manipulation over others, or maybe financial incentive? I reflect on the past few years of voluntarily advocating for educators, students, parents, and guardians in Wake County. And I see hope on the horizon as I look around the board table, and I see faith and freedom represented in your voluntary choices to unmask and or remain masked. How long has it taken since March of 2020 to remind each of us that freedom to take voluntary action is so much more powerful than demands and mandates that force behavior coming from NIH-funded entities like ABC Science Collaborative and or NCDHHS testing, tracking, and tracing contracted out to entities like Mako Medical. As I look around the room and note approximately 29 public citizens in attendance and over 60 empty chairs, I think about the faithful as well as the missing voices from our community and continue to be grateful for voluntary voices showing up because they care about our community, the content and quality of education outcomes that begin in each classroom of our over 190 taxpayer-funded school buildings, and the growing students and families of Wake County who may not have the time or resources to be here. I encourage all of us to continue to use our voices, volunteer, and vote as we balance the freedom entrusted to us with the responsibility that accompanies it. To whom much is given, much is required. Freedom unrestrained is chaos. For example, separating students in classrooms based on vaccinated or unvaccinated status, or redistributing students from one area of the county to another. If we've learned nothing from history and our recent experience with COVID fear, constant mandatory action is oppression that often leads to depression. Let's make sure that our understanding of human rights, the majority and minority, the marginalized and the ones standing alone, applies to every human, no matter the label chosen. Valuing each voice and voluntary action are what motivates me. How about you?
This concludes public comment. Thank you all for coming and taking the time to speak today. We now continue with our information items with our superintendent updates.
Good evening again. We covered 3 items in our work session today. The first item that we covered was continued work on the strategic plan. Just as an update for what's on there, we are asking the board for approval this evening for the framework of that strategic plan that includes the continuing vision and mission, some changes to our core belief, most notably adding student well-being and student agency to core belief 4, and then adding a core belief 7 that speaks specifically to optimal learning environments that cover some of the operational parts of the district. This framework also includes 3 strategic priorities. One around student knowledge and skills, which includes the feedback from around the 4 C's and literacy and knowledge. The second one is student dispositions and well-being. And then the third one is operational effectiveness, and that is through months of conversation, public feedback, etc. And then those are supported by essential pillars that are necessary for conditions for achievement in those areas, high quality instructional core for all students in all content areas, equity-focused practices, high-quality WCPSS staff, and high family and community engagement. This evening, we will be requesting approval of that framework with additional work to come and a timeline that will be part of that presentation that includes fleshing out specific goals in those areas. The second area in the work session today was a continued discussion of the Ombuds position and the draft job description. There was a lot of good feedback and some changes and some questions that came from board members. We'll continue to do work in that area, and we do have some sessions scheduled now with some additional feedback for some different stakeholder groups in our schools, staff, students, and some community stakeholder groups as well. So that will come back to the board again. And then the third item in our work session today was continued work on the equity policy, which is divided into 3 sections that had considerable revisions from the prior version that the board has seen previously around a definition of equity as one section, the use of an equity lens in a second section, and then this third section being the district's commitments to equity. We continue to receive feedback on that policy, and we'll take it to additional stakeholder groups as well, and we'll bring that back to the board also, whether it's the second board meeting in October or first board meeting in November sometime, depending on what timing looks like. And I think we have policy committee as well in October if we need it. So that was our work session today. Thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Moore. At this time, is there a motion to approve the items on the consent agenda?
Motion for approval of the consent agenda items.
Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay. All right, motion passes. Our first 4 action items come out of the Chief of Schools, and 3 are all related to the town of Morrisville. Ms. Betty Parker. Our first one is the First Amendment to Joint Use Agreement with the town of Morrisville at Cedar Fork Elementary School.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you so much for the time to speak with you today. You may have noticed that we attached a PowerPoint presentation to all 3 items. So we thought to provide a little bit of the context to better understand these 3 items, we would run through the PowerPoint very quickly, and then we'll go through the items fairly quickly. We're very happy to bring forward these 3 intergovernmental contracts with our friends from town of Morrisville and Wake Tech. They all support our acquisition of the new high school in Morrisville, known as H14. As soon as we finish that, again, we'll go through the agenda items quickly. I did want to note from the start that this site acquisition journey has been one of the most complex and collaborative that we've ever had since I've been here, at least. In addition to the purchase agreement that we're seeking funding for from the Board of Commissioners, we, together with Wake Tech, Morrisville, Cary, and Wake County, have all either agreed upon or are finalizing terms and conditions on intergovernmental agreements that are mutually beneficial to all. It supports the school and varied community needs. With a persistent focus on collaborative stewardship, this is one of those rare situations where all stakeholders and the community and the taxpayers at large substantially benefit. We shared with the Board of Commissioners yesterday the fact that this board, Wake Tech and Wake County, all have significant interest in the general obligation bond approvals that are being sought in the upcoming general election. This joint undertaking offers a great example to the community of the benefits in collaborative stewardship that enables us to take advantage of shared opportunities and make the most of the funding that we receive for mutual benefit. It has been an adventure with some of the best collaborative opportunities we've had, and it's gone really well. Moving to slide 2, a small high school has been targeted for the Morrisville area through our long-range planning work with ITRI for a number of years. Its placement is expected to help growth in high school crowding in western Wake County. The new high school site is planned at the northwestern portion of the current Wake Tech RTP campus in Morrisville. Wake Tech has a continued commitment to Morrisville, but having experienced virtual learning impacts and varied programmatic demands, it has updated its master plan for the campus. The Morrisville campus is anticipated to include a total of 6 buildings now, with related parking facilities at the southern end. Wake Tech staff has identified the 52-acre northern portion for which alternative uses have been considered, and that's the gray shaded area that you see here. This change in use has created opportunities for collaborative partnerships that include establishment of a new public high school and creation of a new parkland and open space. As you can see with the pink dashed line, the airport overlay boundary bisects the campus. K-12 school activities are an allowed use on the western side, but not on the eastern side. We have negotiated with Wake Tech to acquire a little over 35 acres for a future high school that's shown here in yellow at a price that's well under market. And by that, I mean the current value of this site would probably be 3 to 4 times the price that we are paying. So we really appreciate Wake County and Wake Tech's roles in helping establish that price. Our feasibility studies also confirm that we need to acquire for assemblage the 2.5-acre tract at the northwestern corner that's outlined in green. It's owned by the town. It's a future fire station site. The portion of the property that we seek to acquire that's east of the overlay will still be valuable to us. We have the opportunity to use it for grading, stormwater control facilities, and buffers to maximize the developable aspects on the western side. So it gives us significant design flexibility. You'll notice at the bottom there's an existing parking lot that was constructed by Wake Tech that's in daily use for its operations. Under the terms of our agreement, Wake Tech still has the right to use that surface lot until we are able to relocate or reconstruct it. However, during due diligence, we've realized that Wake Tech's demands for parking with the reduced master plan are not as high as originally thought, so we'll be able to simply remove the portion of the lot that's on our side whenever our project begins. Wake Tech and the town will continue to explore sharing opportunities for the remainder of the parking lot that will benefit their needs. We've worked with the town of Morrisville to acquire that future fire station site to assemble with ours to meet program needs. We've reached an agreement to exchange a comparable amount of land on the northeastern portion of the site, as you see outlined on the map in blue. That will accommodate the relocation of their future fire station and a Wake County EMS station if it's desired. That new location will be within the airport overlay, has more road frontage and less challenging topography, a win for the town. The board benefits by having more of the acreage outside that we can actually use, so it's a win for us. In addition, the town and Wake Tech have reached agreement on a long-term lease for the remainder of that northern portion for a town park that's shown there shaded in green. This area is currently passive green space. The design and use specifics have yet to be decided by the town, and it'll need to be incorporated into their CIP. They don't have a timeline yet, but I'm sure they'll be excited to look into that. The rest of the Wake Tech campus at the south is outlined in orange, and they still have all the room they need to accommodate their master plan. We prepared a preliminary feasibility study to illustrate potential development and to confirm that a small high school program will in fact fit. And we reviewed it through several iterations with the town, Wake Tech, and senior school system staff. The total acreage for the school will be about 36 acres when you add together the two pieces we're acquiring. This area will accommodate most of the standard program elements noted for a small high school of about 1,200 students. The town will benefit of a lease of about 17 to 18 acres of parkland, as well as the lease for the future fire station site. And just as an example, our study indicated location of an ADA-accessible multi-use trail through the wooded park with trailheads at the north and south, parking, room for restrooms, a 9-hole disc golf course, connections to the school site and Wake Tech. Again, it's a preliminary study. The town still has much to think about. We've collaborated also with the town and Wake County to lay the groundwork for the county's support of the school park projects with matching funding availability of up to $250,000. There are 4 standard high school program elements that don't fit on this site per the feasibility study. We've identified off-site nearby locations to accommodate those needs. First would be at Parkside Middle School. We're building a new track there to support the middle school. When the high school project comes along, we have the opportunity to upgrade the track to accommodate high school use as well. For tennis and softball field locations, we focused on Cedar Fork Elementary, and we found that there's room there where we can collaboratively develop tennis courts, a softball field, and all the related improvements at a location where we already have a very robust joint use agreement with the town of Morrisville. You may recall that this is a site where a town community center and shared gymnasium is incorporated in our school design, and there were substantial contributions to its development at the beginning of the design of this school. So this changes out the use of 2 more informal ball fields for more formal tennis courts and the like. So we're very excited about that. At Mills Park, we're in coordination with the town of Cary to develop a baseball field on the Mills Park side of the Mills Park Elementary Middle School and Town Park property. The town had already begun rough grading for a ball field on a concept plan, but priorities and rising costs put a pause on that. So we've got an opportunity to come to an area that's already ready to start with construction, and there's some great opportunities to, again, expand the joint use there with the town of Cary. Our high school project timing, according to our CIP third quarter update, shows design funding for the school is planned for FY24. Construction funding is planned in FY26 and 7. And if all goes well, the projected school opening is in the fall of 27 for the 27-28 year. This has been very exciting to everybody in that part of the county when you consider the crowding levels we already have and the number of trailers that we already have at Panther Creek, Green Hope. And there's still an awful lot of residential growth. Now, having set the stage, our first agenda item today is regarding an amendment to the joint use agreement with the town of Morrisville at Cedar Fork Elementary School. As you may recall, back in April, we entered an MOU together with the town to explore this very thing. The amendment provides the framework for updating and extending our successful joint use agreements that the board entered in 2003 and then again in 2012. The result of a collaborative effort committed to by all parties under the MOU, the salient terms address identification of suitable areas for development of the high school program, as we've mentioned. The board will be responsible for construction of the high school elements to board standards. The board will incorporate additional above program amenities into the design at the town's cost. And this is our typical joint use approach. Towns are often willing to upgrade the facilities to ensure more use at their expense. Parking and access to the community center will need to be maintained during all construction. The town will be responsible for maintenance of the athletic spaces once we build them. And we've adjusted our parking lot responsibilities. The town is going to take the lead in maintaining our parking lots with a cost split of 50-50 when we get to major repairs. If for any reason town maintenance requires closure of the high school facilities, the town has agreed to work to help us relocate practices and games at other spaces within Morrisville if at all possible. It does address tolling the use of the existing ball fields. Obviously, during construction, they'll no longer be available. And we're also extending the joint use term for an additional 25-year period. With that, we would request board approval on this item, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have on this joint use amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Parker. Is there a motion?
I would move adoption of the joint use agreement.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion?
I just want to provide some praise for Ms. Parker and all of the efforts that went into crafting these extremely complex agreements to bring so many different parties together and make everything fit almost like a jigsaw puzzle to help make this high school possible is really tremendous. You know, this is a part of the county where we have incredible growth and not a lot of available land. So anytime you can find any way to put another school in this area is extremely challenging, and especially when you've got 36 acres, which we talk about in facilities all the time, would be far below the footprint we would need to be able to find creative, imaginative alternatives to try to place the different athletic fields so that the school, though small, could still have a full array of sports options is just really, really incredible work. I had some questions about the agreement. You've answered them by email. I'm fully satisfied, and I can take those answers to people on the town council and others who've asked me questions about it. And I just want to say well done on a very, very ambitious and very creative project.
Thank you, and I can't take credit for all of it. It's been quite a collaborative effort. Planning Director Michelle Stegall is with us tonight from Morrisville, and at the end I was going to recognize her. I think she'd like to add some comments, but town staff has been absolutely critical in helping us wade through some of the challenges that we have in that particular area. And our own staff, our FD&C senior site facility planner and our athletic director have provided valuable information all along to figure out what pieces can go where and how we might do it. But it's been a joy to work with such smart, collaborative people to solve a puzzle.
Thank you. Further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? On to interlocal agreements with the town of Morrisville and the trustees of Wake Technical Community College, Northwestern Wake County, Morrisville area for future high school site H14.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. This agreement provides the framework to support the location of the high school elements on the new school site. It also deals with all of the inner workings of the relationships between all three parties on that site. It's sort of the overarching agreement from which all others flow. It includes salient points about the purchase of the land by the board from Wake Tech, the town fire station land swap with the board that I described earlier, the lease of the parkland between the town and Wake Tech, the board and town development of joint use athletic facilities at Cedar Fork that we've just talked about. It also addresses allowing the town to construct a shared drive, utilities, and possible trailhead on school property north adjacent to the fire station that's over in the overlay area. So there's an opportunity there for placement. We are still sort of working through the dotting the I's and crossing the T's with council as to exactly how we'll handle that. But whether it's part of the lease or part of a joint use agreement, we're satisfied that it's in an area that won't adversely impact our school building opportunity. It allows the Wake Tech parking lot to remain on school property until school construction begins. At the time of school design, board and town will evaluate potential for shared infrastructure improvements. Again, it's nothing more than being sure that Wake Tech and the town continue to be at the design table with us to start with, to be sure that we are able to bring all of these concepts to fruition that are so mutually beneficial. There are infrastructure improvements, as with all of our joint use development agreements, for those that benefit multiple parties that are added to assist one or another. We set out a process for how those to be bid and breakout bids, so our partners have the opportunity to review and approve those before paying for them. There'll be some shared cost of studies during design for those aspects that benefit all, and that's where Wake County comes in. From some of these school park opportunities, there's some additional funding that's brought to the table to help the towns do that up front. It has the parties granting each other the necessary easements without cost for any improvements that align on one property or the other. And the town has agreed to waive development fees for construction of the school on this site. With that overview, we would request board approval, and I'm happy to address any questions you may have.
Chair Mahaffey, I would move approval of this second interlocal agreement.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Multiple seconds. Any discussion?
Just one question on this one. I know, I guess I've reviewed the agreement, but, and this is more of a governance question. I don't know if it may be more for the superintendent or for you, Ms. Parker, but where we also have the early college there on site on this Wake Tech campus, is there any, impact on that relationship with the early college? Because essentially we'll have two high schools within very close proximity in terms of like overflow parking resources or meeting resources or any other possibly contemplated shared service?
There, not so much shared services, but there are some synergies that can be very beneficial. Obviously, Wake Tech is very excited about alignment with a high school in addition to the Wake Early College of Information and Biotechnologies. Keep in mind, it won't be long before Parkside Middle School will be open, and our 9th and 10th graders will be relocated there. So then it'll be upper grades. I presume that our new high school will have access, and this may be a Dr. Lane question, but I presume that they'll have access to being able to take college courses at that campus as well as all of our high school students do. So there's that opportunity. The one piece where there's been some sort of programmatic synergy in talking with Darren Coe, we early on had some concerns about how do you conference a 1,200 student high school? And the answer is when Wake Early College has about 400 students, when you combine those, you have a student population that's the size that Panther Creek and Green Hope were originally built to accommodate. So very quickly, by realigning those athletics resources, we have a 4A school that can be conferenced very simply. So right now, those early college kids are going to a different school, but once it opens, I think that's something Darren's thinking about very strongly. Beyond that, in terms of overflow parking, I'm not sure there are any proximate locations that benefit overflow parking. When our 11th and 12th graders are there for the early college, they're college students. So they'll be taking advantage of the Wake Tech provided parking. There really wouldn't be an additional need. We may have some shared parking opportunities in the other direction. So should we have stadium events that overwhelm the parking on the high school site, the adjacent Wake Tech parking is something that we can collaborate with to provide additional programmatic support.
Thank you. If I could just add one additional comment, I have had some conversations with Dr. Rawls about those academic synergies. So I'll leave it there other than to say that we have some opportunities based on existing programming at Wake Tech, partnerships that Wake Tech wants to pursue in the future, some of the companies that are in close proximity or will soon be in close proximity to the school that are all parts of the discussion for the synergies.
Thank you.
Any further discussion or questions? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? And finally, our lease with the town of Morrisville for a future fire station.
Thank you, Chair Mahaffey. And of course, this lease agreement provides the framework for the land swap we talked about. The town currently owns a 2.5-acre site. We are planning to lease them a comparable area for their use for a future fire station as well as an EMS station. We proposed a 99-year lease term, which is the same term as the Middle Creek Library ground lease, so we have some history with this sort of thing. The compensation to the board for the lease, of course, is the conveyance of land and a token $1 per year. The town will benefit, again, because the location will provide them a more constructible site, and we benefit by having more acreage on our side of the airport overlay line. The town is financially responsible for all aspects of the development and operation of the fire station, and they'll own the improvements for the term of the lease. Our approval of the lease will not adversely impact the current use or planned use of the school site. No timeline has been established yet for the new fire station project, and of course it will be incorporated into the town CIP when they are ready to move ahead. We would request board approval, and I'm happy to answer any questions on this item.
All right. Do we have a motion for approval?
I would also move approval of this third local agreement.
All right. Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you. Any discussion? Yep. Ms. Scott, go ahead.
Is the building going to be more soundproof? Just having a fire station here, but seriously, I'm sure there was discussion of having something that can create disruption. So I just wondered what.
I would expect so. I know with other schools we've built in the area or within proximity to the airport and with the Wake Tech buildings themselves, there's some additional roof insulation that helps primarily, but there's some additional sound attenuation measures that are likely to be incorporated. That's the case with any of our schools in close proximity.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Further discussion or questions?
I'll just say this really is a benefit to the whole community out there. They just opened the Harris Road Fire Station out there in Morrisville because right now there's a lot of fire protection is shared with the town of Cary, and opening these new systems in these areas really improve response times and will have a really great impact on community safety out there. So I support it 100%.
And a huge thank you to Wake Tech and especially the town of Morrisville for their partnership on all of this. I know it's not easy work to do all of these joint use agreements, but certainly this is proof that when three entities have a shared goal, we can make things happen. So thank you all.
Absolutely. And if I may, I'd like to invite Michelle Stegall, Town Planning Director, up. I know she wanted to offer comments. Michelle led the team with Town Manager Martha Page, Assistant Manager Brendan Zudema, and Assistant Town Manager Giselle Rodriguez Villanueva. We have met more times than I have seen you in the last year or two. It's been very frequent. For Wake Tech, Dr. Gail Green, the Chief Operating Officer, and Vice President of Facilities Jeff Carter, along with President Rawls, have just been tireless. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank this board for being open to creative solutions where difficulties preclude standard operations. Not all boards would consider something like this, and it was heartwarming to see the immediate recognition of the difficulties and the creative problem solving that you were willing to encourage. I was going to say tolerate. That's probably not the right word, but Michelle, would you like to join us?
Thank you for being here, Ms. Stegall.
Thank you for giving me just a couple minutes to address the board. I really do appreciate it. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you. This is a very proud moment for us. Town of Morrisville residents have desired a high school in Morrisville for a long, long time. And we just had the Wake Early College open up, and now to say that we're going to have our first public high school in Morrisville, and to have a public high school in Morrisville, it's a milestone for the community. I think there were some references to the intergovernmental cooperation that occurred to make this happen, and I just want to echo those comments. 5 different governmental entities had to come together to pull this off, and it was referenced as a jigsaw puzzle, and I think that's a great analogy because it really was. It was a partnership that I've been very proud to be part of. It's shown that when you have committed parties that are looking to serve the public, that think outside the box, do creative and innovative things, and you could really do great things together. This is probably the best example of intergovernmental cooperation that I've seen in my career, and I'm just really looking forward to the groundbreaking, seeing the new school open up, and want to thank Betty as well. I've probably driven Betty crazy over the years, calling her, talking about different sites as potentials for schools. She's always made herself available. She's always taken that next step to look into and explore things, but it's been difficult. Land is hard to find. But it's a relationship that I very much value. She has done a lot of heavy lifting on this, and I just look forward to continuing that relationship. I want to thank you for your work as well. But thank you very much. Appreciate your partnership.
Thank you as well, and please send our thanks back to your team in Morrisville. We know that this is a big lift and an exciting moment for everyone here and in Morrisville as well. Any further comments, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, nay? Thank you, Ms. Parker.
Thank you very much.
Up next, we have approval of our strategic plan framework, which was discussed. Oh, no. I was jumping ahead. I'm so sorry, Dr. Lane. No worries. That does not mean anything. Yes. So thank you.
Sandy.
Dr. Kimberly Lane is here to talk about our Magnet School Assistant Program Grant and our Magnet School name change.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Chair Mahaffey, Vice Chair Haggerty, board members, Superintendent Moore. I did ask Cindy DeFore to join me from the Office of Grants, and I'll share a little bit more why in just a moment. I've stood before you several times in the last 12 months to garner your support for the 2022 Magnet School Assistance Program Grant. From surveys of staff, families, and parents to working with our partners in the Grants Office, Data Research and Accountability, the Office of Student Assignment, Long-Range Planning, and the Real Estate Services, who you just heard from, and she really set the stage for what we're sharing tonight. We worked together to determine which schools to include in our grant application and ensure that we honor the Wake County Public Schools magnet principles of reducing high concentrations of poverty, promoting diversity and school integration, maximizing use of school facilities, and providing innovative and/or expanded educational opportunities. Tonight, I come to you to make an official request to change the names of the 4 schools included in the MSAP 2022 Project Synergy Grant. Isn't it interesting that we heard about synergy earlier? So it must be the word of the hour. However, before asking you to do so, I asked Cindy DeFore to join me in sharing a bit of great news. Come on. Through lots of collaboration and collective work with school leaders and staffs, families and students, as well as many individuals and groups across multiple departments, including facilities and operations, transportation, special ed services, the Office of Equity Affairs, academics, student support services, tech services, finance and budget, human resources, our chiefs, our area superintendents, and the entire school choice planning and assignment team, and you, board members, for your support. It is with great honor that Superintendent Moore, Cindy DeFore, our grants office, and the Magnet and Curriculum Enhancement Programs office are pleased to announce to you tonight that Wake County Public School System is a recipient of the 2022-2027 U.S. Department of Education MSAP Grant Award for Project Synergy in the amount of $13,553,033. A heartfelt thanks to everybody. If I missed anybody in saying thanks, it was truly a collaborative effort. We were trying to think today literally how many people have touched this grant, and it takes a team, a massive team, and it couldn't be done without everyone. So a heartfelt thanks to our grants office staff, the entire Magnet team. But I did want to call special attention to one, and she couldn't be here tonight because she's at a recruiting event. But Tasha Haynes in the Magnet office is our key grant coordinator, writer, and we tried to get her to name today how many grants, MSAP grants, she's helped write, and she couldn't. We know that she has brought in millions, or helped to bring in millions of dollars for the district. The district will receive approximately $3.4 million this year, with additional funding to come over the course of the next 4 years. Wake County was one of a few districts, we don't know the exact number yet, to receive the award, and it is the first time in Wake County Public School history that the district is home to 3 MSAP grants concurrently for totaling over $40 million. MSAP Cornerstone began in 2017 and will end next year, 2023. Project Nexus began in 2021 and will end in 2026. And now Synergy began October 1st, 2022 and will run through 2027. Project Synergy is an important name because it does capture the essence of Wake County Public Schools' proposal for these 4 schools and embodies the district's conviction that transformative learning occurs when children from socioeconomically, racially, and geographically diverse backgrounds are exposed to innovative programs and learn with peers in integrated environments. So tonight we come to you to discuss Centennial Campus Middle School, led by the esteemed Catherine Hutchinson and her Magnet coordinator Lindsay Strickland and their design team. And they will significantly revise the existing University Connections and Leadership Magnet theme to become the first and only Center for Innovation in Wake County Public School System, where students will use design thinking to spark innovative ideas and creative problem solving. Wake Forest Magnet Elementary School, with Shell Smith as principal and her design team, will establish a new I-STEM program. And yes, that I is a little italicized I. We think about it as innovation through STEM or investigations through STEM. Programs where students will engage in discovery to solve emerging problems. Wildwood Forest Magnet Elementary, a shout out to Holly Shaw and her design team, will establish a new Academy of Arts and Design program In East Millbrook, Magnet Middle, Aaron Marson and his Magnet coordinator, Joanna Caves, and their design team will significantly revise the existing Academy of Visual and Performing Arts to also become the Academy of Arts and Design, where students will move through iterations of prototyping and testing, making their thinking visible through imaginative problem solving. So now, back to the business at hand. Staff comes to you recommending the following name changes for the MSAP Synergy schools. Centennial Campus Center for Innovation, Magnet Middle School. East Millbrook, Magnet Middle School, Academy of Arts and Design. Wake Forest, ISTEM, Magnet Elementary School. And Wildwood Forest, Magnet Elementary School, Academy of Arts and Design. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lane. Very exciting news. Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Is there, and thank you, Ms. Scott, for the second. Any discussion? Ms. Scott.
First of all, congratulations, and thank you so much for your work in securing the grants and also highlighting the amazing work of staff members. Dr. Lane, that's very kind of you, and I think it speaks to your leadership style, so thank you so much. I could not be more excited that we're continuing to move forward with these magnet schools. We heard this evening from someone during public comment about her own child having a positive experience in one of our schools of choice within the Wake County Public School System. And this never is to take away from our neighborhood or base schools, but this is just such a critical piece of providing the mission and the purpose that Dr. Lane just described. So I'm just very excited to see these programs grow and to see what these students and their teachers accomplish, and so excited for the communities that are around these schools. I know they're excited about that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Scott. Mr. Haggerty.
Thank you. I'm going to channel our board member. One of our board members is not here, Miss Roxy Cash, because I know she was extremely excited about all of these programs and would want to convey her congratulations to you directly if she could. I also just wanted to ask you, the use of the academy in the names, does that have any special meaning, or does it distinguish the school from other schools or other types of magnet schools, or was that just something in terms of trying to convey like the art and design theme, or what's the background on that?
Actually, that was part of staff's recommendation. So we did go into the schools with students, parents, families, and staff. So they came away asking for that. They felt like with the two schools together, we have a K-8 experience. And because we were revisioning East Millbrook, we did want to give it a different name so it would feel a little bit more cohesive. But there was no great significance except they like the ring to it. So I do think because it's arts and design, that academy idea, we're working with NC State University, their College of Design, to do a lot of the design thinking. So that academy mindset, they had an opportunity to do some field trips, and I think that came across as a kind of an entrepreneur experience for them. So,
thank you.
Sir.
Further questions? Does this have any feeder pattern changes for any of these schools that you anticipate?
We created a little greater access. We did not have an arts pathway, so we have developed an Arts Plus pathway, so that will support coming from Brooks and Millbrook Elementary, feeding into Centennial. So it will create greater access, but not changes.
Okay, thank you.
Of course, Wake Forest and Wildwood being new, Wildwood will feed to East Millbrook, and Wake Forest right now will feed to West Millbrook. So part of Wake Forest then will have some world languages included in that to help feed into an IB program.
All right. Thank you very much. We're looking forward to seeing the work that they do very soon.
Thank you very much.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right, thank you. Now moving to the Chief of Staff. and our strategic plan framework that was discussed earlier in the work session. Dr. Robinson.
Thank you. Chairman Haffey, Vice Chair Haggerty, board members, Superintendent Moore. I'm here to present for your consideration the framework for a new strategic plan for the district, which we discussed earlier today in work session. Over the last several months, staff have gathered data from stakeholders throughout the district, including parents, students, members of the business community, representatives from higher education, community advocacy groups, and others. Feedback from the board during multiple work sessions over the past few months has helped to shape the feedback into the framework you see here today. This framework includes a restating of our district vision, mission, and core beliefs. It also highlights 3 strategic priorities: student knowledge and skills, student well-being, and operational effectiveness. Those 3 priorities are supported and driven by 4 essential pillars representing the daily work of the district. Tonight, we are asking for your approval of this framework, which would allow staff to begin the work of aligning to and implementing the new plan. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
First, can we get a motion to approve the strategic plan framework?
I'll move adoption of the strategic plan framework.
Okay, we have a motion from Vice Chair Haggerty, a second from Ms. Johnson-Hostler. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Dr. Robinson, thank you for the presentation and again for the work earlier today during the work session. I know there's a lot of questions and a lot of discussion around it. So just to be clear for folks that are just watching the meeting and not the work session, tonight's presentation is just on the framework, which we've worked on for some time, and that we'll be coming together later to develop the specific goals and metrics for measuring and evaluating our progress toward these important goals in the framework. Is that correct?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. And just for the sake of it, like our next steps after, if we have successful adoption tonight, where do you envision the next steps would fall?
So the next steps are to work with departments and other stakeholders within the organizations to really flesh out and begin to talk about what the long-term goals are going to be and really decide on what the metrics and things of that nature are going to be as well. That information will be brought back to the board as an information item and to give in consideration to provide feedback of those goals and objectives as well. Yes, sir.
I'll just add one additional piece that was also mentioned. A couple of the pieces of the framework, in particular the 4 C's and the well-being, those are things that are really new and kind of innovative, and we need to be really thoughtful about what we have already in place that helps support goals and metrics there or where there might be a gap. So that's additional work before us also.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no further hands, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right. Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on to our next item. It is revisions to the superintendent's contract. This is our 5th amendment to the superintendent's contract, which revises Section I, which is the term to extend the ending date of the superintendent's contract from June 30th, 2025 to June 30th, 2026. Board approval is requested for this amendment, and this is something that is done annually upon review of superintendent's evaluation. Is there a motion to approve the revisions?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
I will just comment based on some of the things that we hear in the news or from some of the public comment. We very intentionally changed the teacher contracts when the state removed career status to have a rolling 4-year contract. The purpose of a rolling 4-year contract is to have stability, which you absolutely need in an educational system. And I just want to reinforce that I think it's absolutely appropriate. We do the same thing for Superintendent Moore, who I think has done a good job in leadership. These accusations of political gamesmanship are not appropriate for the sound operation of a school system. And I just want to be clear that this is sound business practice, and Superintendent has been doing a very good job in leading the organization. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Martin. Ms. Waters.
And I would like to echo Dr. Martin's
comments about your excellence and your leadership. We are very fortunate to have you in this role, and very grateful to your service.
All right. Seeing no more hands, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? All right. We now move on to closed session.
Chair Mahaffey?
Yes, sir.
At this time, I would move that the board go into closed session for the express purposes of considering confidential personnel information protected under General Statute 143, 318, 11A1, A3, and A6, to consult with the Board of Education attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege as provided for under General Statute 143, 318, 11, and to consider confidential student information protected under General Statute 115C-402 and the Family Education Rights and Privacy Act 20 U.S. Code 1232G.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? We are now in closed session. Thank you all very much.